Good evening and welcome back to another editor showcase video, this time with custom weapons. I wanted to start off by saying that the previous testing map had to be discarded, because some asset or some setting that I used caused the map to be unable to be loaded. I know that, for example, for me at least, that the triggering condition archetype stage stability causes this for me. Let me demonstrate. Now that I'll try to load the map, see. The editor does not crash or forcibly close, it simply does not proceed until I remove the condition. Now the map loads perfectly fine, but I could not find out what it was that made the previous map unusable. At least now you know that the editor has some problems with being unable to being launched because some niche asset or feature is being used. Try to remove some of what you recently created and maybe that will fix it. And for those who are curious, I will be having a combat arena with continuously spawning units using triggers. Using a repeat forever create units with and an issue order with the order to location and an wait between them before repeating. Now for the video's actual content. Today I will be showcasing Frenzied Strikes, a weapon that will make the unit attack faster and faster. Clobbering Strikes, which applies a stacking debuff that eventually stuns the target. Laceration Dash, which causes the unit to launch itself and apply a damage over time debuff onto units in its path. And finally Shockwave Slam. And now let's get into the video's content, creating weapons. First thing first, I will be creating Frenzied Strikes, a weapon which will increase the attack speed and movement speed for every swing that the unit creates. For the components will be a damage, a buff, an applied debuff, a set and a weapon data. Okay, now that all of them are made, let's go working with them. For the damage, I will be setting the amount here. This determines the effects damage, the effects value. Let's see, for a buff, I will be setting the buff here. The buff visuals. This will create a persistent visual effect on the unit so long as it has the buff remaining onto it. I'm not sure what all of these looks are, if all of them actually do something. Currently there are no preview options, so you're just gonna have to either try to reverse engineer some existing spells or try to remember what all the buffs has from the campaign or the cope, for instance. And I will be setting the duration to 2 seconds. The icon here, this will determine in the interface when you select a unit what the buff will look like. And currently there is some problems with storing custom names, at the very least for users in a PTR. When you restart the program, also you will see this string, this icon, no strings found on ID. So don't bother too much with putting too much effort into this. It will likely break once you restart the program. Also, I forgot to mention as well, alignments. If I hypothetically wanted this to be an enemy to be able to dispel this, then I would be setting this to as an helpful. Or if I wanted an allies to be able to dispel it from me, then I would be setting it to harmful. And modifiers here, I will be setting in two effects onto this. Attack speed percentage. This will increase a weapon's attack speed or decrease it if you set it to a negative value. I will be setting this to 10%. And also speed percentage bonus and unscaled bonus. These are for movement speed. Unscaled bonus increases by a flat amount, so if you have a value of 2 or -2, then it will add or subtract 2 from the speed. And I'll be using a percentage to increase by 10%. And the stacks here, I will be setting, it will start off with 1 stack, and I will having a maximum of 50 stacks, so every time the apply buff applies it, then it will add more and more, and I will have the decay to 1, so that every time the duration runs out, then I will only lose one of the accumulated stacks, so it will go from I could set this to higher as well, to 2 or 3, so they could go from 20 to 18 to 16 and so on, but I will be setting it to 1. And a tooltip here is also an option if you want to hover over it to see any description of the buff in the interface. And things that I will be setting it to set to be able to better explain things. In order for instance, weapon to fire multiple effects, I would have to clump them up into a game effect set, which will let me use multiple things at the same time. And I'll be setting 2 of them. First the damage and the apply buff. Yes, that's everything. And the apply buff. The buff here indicates which one it will apply onto the target. And the target here, let's see. The target here, if I had used it to a target now, then the weapon will be applying to the unit I'm attacking, which will give the increasing attack and movement speed to the one I'm attacking. But I'll be setting this to source, so that when the weapon fires its set, every time the apply buff launches, it will apply onto me instead, the unit that I'm attacking with. And the weapon data finally. The melee indicator here is an handy thing to have. It will prevent you from if you have a small unit and do not want to be able to attack up and down cliffs, then this could be used if you have a longer range melee ability. Also, there is some buff filters that I believe reduces damage only for melee, for instance. So this acts as an filter as well. And the icon here, this will determine in the user face next to the armor what the weapon will look like. And the name, again, this will have some problems with storing it long term in the PTR, but that will hopefully be something that they will be fixed when it leaves the PTR. The period here, this indicates how often this will swing. Let's see. So this indicates that it will be a 1.8 seconds between every weapon swing. Range acquire, this determines a unit's aggro range. And units themselves in Stormgate does not have an aggro range. If you use something to disable one weapon and enable another, then the unit will have the new weapons acquisition range. I'll be setting this to 20 for demonstration purposes. And range maximum. You can set it to whatever you want, but for melee units, then you can just check out the original weapons weapon range in order to not make it look out of character or odd. So I will be setting this to, I think the original one at the very least is 1.25. And the weapon fire. When the unit attacks, this is what determines what effect it will launch. Let's see. Game effect set. This means that it will use the set which will apply damage to the enemy and apply buff onto myself. And the swing here. This is the wind up time for how long it takes for the weapon to actually launch. The EXO, for instance, this has a swing of 0. It has an animation where it has a recoil, but when it stops, it immediately fires its weapon. In total contrast with the Hellborn, or the Pit Fiend as it is named in editor. When it stops and attacks an enemy, it will have a long attack animation before it fires, 0.7 seconds, I believe. So that is what weapon swing is. And Unreal Component. This is the attack animation for the unit. When you fire the weapon, you could hypothetically have it spell an animation, I believe, or something else, but most of the time you will be using AC weapon generic. This will be using its default weapon attack animation. There is a dedicated air attack or air attack animation and ground attack animation that I will showcase later, but most of the time you will be using AC weapon generic. And the target filter here as well. This will determine what enemies you can and cannot attack. Height plane air and height plane ground. If you have height plane ground, then the weapon can only attack ground targets, or height plane air, you can only attack air targets. If you have none of these, then the unit will be able to attack both ground and air. And that is everything, yes, for now. And now I'll apply to a unit. In the bottom of a unit data of a unit, you will find a weapon list. here are the different weapons that an unit can have. For instance, the new unit, the Incarnate, has 2 weapons, one for ground and one for air. Currently I'm still working out on how this works, but I don't think you can have both have 2 ground or 2 air attacks for now. But that is something I will have to try and find out later. And now the brute has the Frenzied Strikes. Now let's test it out. Now for the next weapon, Clobbering. It will be a fast attacking weapon that applies stacking buffs that eventually will stun the target. And this will be a little bit more extensive list of components. And damage, 2 buffs, one for stack and one for stun. And 2 apply buffs, apply stacks and apply stun. 1 remove buff, 2 effect sets, 1 switch and 2 validators, and 1 weapon damage. Okay, now I think I have everything. And for the damage portion, I will be dealing a small amount because I want to stun a lot by attacking frequently. See, for the first buff here, for the stacks, see, I will be having a 4-second duration. Just so I can see it in the interface that the target is stunned. It has the stacks. Again, I don't really need the name. And stacks. I will have 6 of them total, and I will not have any decay. If the duration runs out, then all the stacks will be lost. And now for the stun. First thing first, the tags. Status. Here are different status effects, and one of them is stunned here, status stunned. This will apply. This will count the unit as a stun, so it cannot fight back or move or be used by the enemy. And I'll be having a quick visual effect so they can see which units are stunned and for how long. I'll be skipping the icon and for stacks. Let's see. By the way, that's incorrect, sorry. For the duration, I will be having a 0.5 seconds in order to showcase something about how stuns work in how the AI handles a stun in Stormgate. And also having an UI. Where's the fist? Demolition fist, yes. So that I can see the difference between the stacks and stuns. Now for the apply stacks. It is pretty straightforward. Applying the previous Clobbering stacks. and applying 1 stack every time onto the target that the unit is firing on with its weapon. And apply stun. Applying stun. Now for an remove stacks. I will need an effect in order to remove the stacks, because I've tried to with other options, but this I will explain why it's needed when it come to the switch portion. I'll be removing stacks and removing all 6 of them. Now for the first game effect set. I will having two effects, and first thing first, clobbering damage and clobbering apply stacks for the stacks damage, and for the second one I will be having 3 effects. First thing, clobbering damage. Secondly, apply the stun. And thirdly, remove remove the buff portion. Now for a little bit more scary portion about modding and programming in general. Logic effects. No, wait, it's not. Okay, I accidentally created 4 sets instead of 2 sets and 2 stacks. Now, let's see, has stacks? Yes. And give me a moment as I set this up, because I have such a stuttering problem that there is no way that I can explain this in real time. Okay, now that is set up. This logic effect will be asking the question: does the target has 6 stack of this buff? I will go step by step. Usually you will be using a function call. This will be having all the features and more in-depth details, but I need a logic first in order to count a number. And these logic parameters I will be applying on. I will be setting on a picture on the next slide to showcase what these logic elements represents. And for the first function call, the feature, I will be having count buff stacks on target from source. This the question itself is how many buffs does the target has, and the entity will be, you can have different entities, but I will be my question will be, who is the weapon pointing the target at, and the target is the entity. If I had set it to source, for instance, then the question would have been if the unit that is attacking, if that has had 6 stacks of this buff. So I will be using the target here for that purpose. and the buff, that is the stacking buff, and the source, I did this incorrectly. I will be setting this to, wait, did I? Yes, any unit. This, the source will be any unit, so it does not care. If I, for instance, have multiple units with Clobbering attacking at the same time, then it does not care who applied the buff. It only cares about how many stacks it has. So that is why I have any unit, and the count will be to 6. And next for the stun, this will be a little bit easier. Give me a moment. And now that is set up. For the previous one I needed an logic parameter, but here it simply goes straight forward. It asks if the target has a buff. The first parameter, I do not care about stacks. Target has a buff from source, and who is the target? The victim of the weapon, that is the target of the weapon. The buff, this is the stun portion, and the source, any unit. It does not care who it was that applied the buff, only that it has the buff. Now for the switch effect. It will be a little bit intimidating, but did I? Well, fantastic! I created 5 of them. Okay, now here I have the game effect switch finally. For this, I will have this location here. I will have 2 cases. For the first case condition, I will be having the question if it has the stacks. And for the action portion, is this correct? Yes. For in the first case here, it will be asking the question. The condition is the question: does the target have has stacks if it has 6 stacks from the validator? It will have the case validator if the target has a count of stacks numbering 6. If this is true, then it will perform the action to apply effect stun, remove buff stacks, and apply damage. Now for the second case condition, I will be asking if the target has a stun effect. And I will be simply having if this is true, I will be simply having the damage portion. So, and the default action, what's the set? Applies stacks and buff. If neither of these cases are true, which it will be when before I have attacked, then it will be the weapon will be weapon's default action will be apply stacks and damage. And if either of these are true in this order, if the first one is true, then it has stacks, then it will perform stun, remove stacks, and damage. If this is not true, it will go down further into the next case. If it has stun, then it will simply apply the damage. And if neither of these are true, it will have its default action backup. That is how the switch cases this is how switch cases work in computer programming. And now for assembling the weapon. Now previously I explained I did not necessarily explain things incorrectly, but I explained poorly, and because I misunderstood how swing, in which order swing and effect operated. When the unit comes within the range of a unit, then when it comes within the range of a unit, it will start by using its swing effect, and upon completion it will use its weapon fire effect. And once the swing is complete, it will apply a cooldown to the unit. So the effectively in combat, the swing timer and the period effectively adds on cooldown together to I will have a swing timer of 0.5 and a cooldown period of 0.3 seconds, so effectively this weapon will have a 0.55 second cooldown. And when the weapon fires, it will go through the switch logic to see what it is supposed to do. And I will be setting the range minimum to 0.8, because when we get into demonstration, I will explain something about how stun effects work, how it affects the AI in the middle of combat. And now it's all applied to the unit as well. Don't forget that. And also I will be showing something that could be a little bit frustrating. Let's see. There are different. There's some of the campaign and co-op units has the same name, so it will be a little bit difficult to find some of them. And weapon list, I will be removing both of these and apply clobbering. Now, there are multiple identical bruisers here, and initially I had no idea which one is who. But the way I found this was by going into the entities properties here and going into the list here and see who has the correct attack, the correct weapon. Yes, this one has the clobbering weapon. All of these others have the default weapon, so this is the correct one. That's one way I found out how to figure out which one is which. And here we are. I finally got it working. Now, as the unit attacks, it will apply 6 stack, and then it will launch the final attack, which will stun the target, as you can see. I was going to mention that for testing purposes that the stun effect added an odd behavior effect onto the units. Previously in this week when I tried to make it, then stun effects would cause the units that are attacking the unit when the unit got attacked. For some reason the units would decide to move away from the stunned unit, but it could be that it was a PTR thing at that they accidentally had made the stun tag or something, accidentally applied some wrong tags, like the unit will be awakened if it takes damage tags or something. But at the very least you can see that things work now properly. Now for the next weapon, Laceration Dash. It will be using an minimum targeting range programming so that it will dash through enemies and leave a damage over time effect on them. And it will be launching the unit itself. Now for the components. A damage, a buff, an apply buff, launch projectile, a persistent and a weapon data. Okay, now all of them are created. Now let's work with them. First the damage, I will have a small amount because that will deal damage over time. And the buff, I will have this lasting 4.2 seconds and a periodic of 0.3. I was thinking about 4 seconds, but it will go to 3.9 seconds with 13 intervals and leaving on 0.1 second empty with doing nothing, and that irritated me for some reason, so that's why it's 4.2, so it will deal of 14 total. And periodic effect. Applying the damage over here to tick at every interval. And I'll have this potentially stack multiple times. Also where's the icon so that I can see it? Good, so now I can see which one it is. And next up is the apply buff. That is simple enough. Applying the previously created buff here and applying one stack every time. Now for the launch projectile and persistent to create a minimum targeting feature to the attack. I will be making a dedicated video on this because I'm really bad at explaining myself on the improvisation, and I will go into greater detail on the logic of how it is made. But I'm unable to articulate it on the improv right now. But this is how it is made. I will be used with the anim montage component. I will be able to launch the unit itself, in contrast with the projectile here, which will create an independent projectile. There are multiple versions here for launching the unit itself there, but I think it is primarily just to have different animations tied to different spells. For example, War's co-op commander, Dark Speed Rush, and Blockade's heroic leap ability. I'm not sure if there are much of difference other than the animation for the specific unit, but at the very least this is what you will be using for launching an unit when you want to launch a projectile. Also for launching a unit, I believe you need them. On fallback to the caster. Yes, the caster. As far as I understand it, to be honest. And at impact location, it will be the point, not the other two, and impact and the launch location that for some reason is set to target instead of source or caster. And I did something wrong there. It was supposed to be caster. And the periodic, not periodic. The max range I will have to 5. I don't want it to don't want it to dash around too much. And a skill shot. The skill shot means that it will, when the launch projectile hits a target, then it will on contact it will once deal an effect that you decide for it. Let's see. I will have a target filter so that it will only target ground. And a width of 2. This determines the launch projectile's width, how far from the projectile or the unit that it will damage, or apply effects to stuff. It will zip at some moderate amount of speed, and I will apply buff. It will apply the damage over time buff with when it comes into contact with something. And now for the persistent effect, this will be used to determine which direction it will go. I will, with the next weapon afterwards, I will hopefully be explaining better how the persists work. I've not done it justice in explaining what it is actually supposed to do, but for now, I'm just using it to give it an direction for where it will launch the projectile. Initial. And the offset details. I will be setting it to a distance of 5 ahead of the unit. Oops. And now for these things. That is correct. And the start. That is supposed to be at the source. And otherwise lead is good. Good. Now to assemble the weapon. And the range acquisition in order to give it an aggro range and a maximum range of 5 years. And launching the persistent and targeting. Only are able to target ground. Good. Now let's test the weapon. And I forgot one small detail. In the the weapon's attack animation. Usually I tend to apply AC weapon generic to all of the weapons, but for this weapon, when it launches itself, then for some reason the Lancer just flies around with its idle posture. Let's see. It just stands around like this and flies back and forth without changing anything. So that's why I'm using AC base weapon attack montage as the attack animation for this spell. It is not perfect, but at the very least it looks a little bit better than idle animation. And now it will dash around through unit and apply its bleeding damage over time effect. It is not a perfect, but at very least it will have some, at least have its standing, at the very least have its aggressive animation onto it. I will make a dedicated video on the difference between how they are made with launching a unit and launching a projectile for the minimum targeting programming. But at least I'm happy with this so far. And now for the last weapon, the Shockwave Slam. This will be a little bit more complicated than it had to be, because I wanted it to only damage units once in every wave. But I managed to accomplish, I do believe. Now let's get started. For the component list: a damage, a buff, an apply buff, and a remove buff, 2 surge radiuses, and a validator, a set, a persist, and a weapon data. Now everything is assembled, and I have made an extra one. I will not be using it, but I will explain why I will not be using damage radius despite I'm using damage in an area later. Now for the damage, I will be setting it to 40 in order to make it easier to see if I only hit units once or not. And see the buff. Okay, now here's the buff, and I will be setting this to a duration of 2 seconds. And the game effect apply buff. I just need to all I need is the previously made buff. That's all that's needed. And now for the remove buff. This will be a little bit special. The buff will be the usual. But where is it? Source match. Source match means that the unit that casts the remove behavior will only be able to with this enabled, the unit will only be able to remove buffs that it has created itself, be it positive or negative buffs, whatever be it. With this enabled, you can only. So if I have, for instance, I will explain later why I need this. And now for the set. 2 F8. Yes, 2 F8s. And the location. This will be the. This will be onto the entity, and the target will be the target, yes. Now for the effects. Slam and apply buff. And I will be Oops. I will be setting the validator here for a particular reason. The damage radius lacks for the set here I will be using the buff in order to prevent you from the consecutive explosions from damaging a unit more than once. With the damage radius, it lacks any proper validator in order to filtrate targets. With the validator here, if this goes improperly, then the entire damage radius will be stopped. Or if the filter here, I cannot specify any based on whether it has a buff or not. So that is why I cannot use a damage radius. With this set here will be launched with the search radius. The search radius will search everyone in a radius of 6, but only the eligible ones will be affected because the validator is placed here. And now for the search radius set. Oops. Shockwave Slam is set in order to apply damage and search radius against the valid targets. And the radius will be 6. And I will be setting the impact, the model for the explosion here. So that where is it? When the search radius goes off, then the explosion will occur there. The model of the explosion, and the search filters in order to exclude friendly fire, and a tag to only make it affect ground targets. And now for the search radius remove buff. Now apply the game effect, remove buff in a radius of 20 in order to this search radius here will search in a large area in order to make sure that all targets have removed their tag, which prevents them from receiving the Shockwave Slam damage again from the explosions. And search filters. It is not necessary, but I'll just apply it to remove the friendly fire to get it on. And search location. It will be at a point, and that point will be the castle, in order to make sure that it will always be in the center of the unit. And now for the validator. Give me a moment as I set this up. I have too much of a stuttering problem to explain this in real time. Okay, now that I have set this up, now the logic here will ask the question if the target has a buff from the source being the source being specifically the caster, and with the caveat that this is false, in order to make sure that the only targets that do not have the buff are eligible targets. I'm using the target target has buff as the core question. If the target has on buff, the entity is the target. Again, the one that the weapon is being pointed at, the buff being the buff, and specifically here, the source. This, I could have set this to any target, but specifically I'm setting to the source, being the one that used the weapon and in turn used the search radius. If I had this to any target, then if I have a second unit that also uses the same weapon, then it could potentially be blocking the damage from other units that using the same weapon. That is why I'm specifically similarly to the remove buff specifically from source. I'm using the specific from source here as well, instead of any. And now for the game effect persistent. In order to hopefully be able to do it justice and explain what this actually does and what offsets actually do. Search effect. I'm just setting up the effects in order to be able to explain better. Okay, now for when the unit attacks, I wanted to initially be when the weapon is set off and I actually attack, I wanted to immediately deal an explosion close to it, and afterwards I want 3 consecutive explosions behind it. So the search radius is set that searches an area and applies damage, and the buff will occur at all 3 locations. But okay, now that it is set up, now let me explain. When the weapon is fired, I want it to start off by immediately causing an explosion near it, and subsequently 3 explosions one after another, and for this I will be using the offset value here, and I'm just gonna set it quickly. The location where this occur will be the point, and the central point will be the caster. Not the source, the caster. As this is set up now, if I were to launch the attack, all 3 weapons would be in the center. The initial and the 3 subsequent effects will all occur in the center here, which is not what I want. So now I will be going into offset. You've seen me use the offset initial here on launching objects, but now I'll be explaining properly what this does. The vector facing and vector end. This determines in what angle something will be facing, and I'll quickly set this up. The starting point will be the caster. The entity is the starting point is the entity caster, and the end will be the target, meaning that the unit that uses the weapon will be the persistent will be facing towards the target, which in this case will be the unit that is attacking. And now if I were to use where is it? Here. If I now were to set an offset radius of 3, then so let me move this quickly so we'll see this better. You can see it on the background. Now, if I offset it, the initial effect will start at 1, 2, 3, facing here, and so specifically, without using the angle. Facing the target, facing the caster facing the target will offset from 3, launch the initial effect here, but the 3 periodical effects will still go off here. So, now for the periodics. Now for the first periodic offset. If I set this to 3, now all of the three attacks will occur here. All of the 3 attacks will go here, but I want them to start off here, then go and subsequently go further ahead. So I forgot to send something. I want the periodical effect to occur three times with a delay of 0.3 seconds between each effect. Now for the periodic. If I set the angle to 5, now all of the initial effect will occur 1, 2, 3, and the periodic will occur here, but all of them will be occurring here instead of jumping. So I have the option to add more of them. Now I'll be to 7 and 9 and 9. So the initial will be at 3, then the periodic will go 5, 7, and 9. So we will go 3, 5, 7, and 9. But in order to help you understand what's actually going on here, there is also an angle. If I were to set this to a 45-degree angle, then I'm not sure which directions plus or minus, but then there's the second periodic will go 45-degree angle in one of these directions, and the third one will still go here. So you can hypothetically do all kinds of funny patterns with this, with, for instance, having the initial going here, then periodically go the first periodic going here, the second going here, and the third going all up here. Or you could go all the way around here and start using the offset angle to affect who knows where, seeing as you can turn this in a 360-degree angle. So hopefully this explains what periodic and offsets in periodic does. Also did I set it to? Yes, there. And when the last periodic goes off, the persist will cause the expire to occur. And seeing as the expire do not have any offset, it will be launched in the location around in the center of the caster, meaning that the expire effect will occur here. Hopefully that explains how periodics work with this. How periodic offsets work, I'm sorry. And now to assemble the assemble the weapon data. And I'm just gonna spell this, and I'll be setting to 2.5 in order to have a small delay so that you can see what's going on, and setting the aggro range to 15, and for here I'll be setting the weapons range to 4, and I'll set this to Shockwave Slam. Now I can set this to the range to whatever it is I want. The initial effect on the persist is in a range of 3, but I've set this to 4. So when the unit is within a range of 4, then the center of the initial effect will go off here, but the unit can still cast its persistent effect going persistent, the offsets going on around here. I could, for instance, also set this to 16 out of its range. It won't be affected, but now the Incarnate will still use its shockwave attack to send its waves off. So you can, this is a neat thing, you can set this to almost whatever you want for the thematic purposes. So it will the persist will still go off. And for the swing at 0.33 is about the Incarnate's ground weapon animation time according to its starter. And for the Unreal here, I will be using AC weapon ground. This means that the Incarnate has 2 weapon animations. It will use its claws to attack on the ground, and it can also use its back weapon against the air. But this is purely for visuals. I could hypothetically use an ranged attack to attack grounds, and it will, if I have AC, if I had AC weapon ground, then it will be using its back animation to as an attack. So that I will be using AC weapon ground specifically to ensure that it's the correct animation. And setting off ground to make sure that it can only attack ground targets. Now let's give it a shot and see. Just give a moment. I'll set it to the unit. Don't forget. And now let's test it out. Yep, things looks like they've been in working order. And you can tell that it only affected once, because if it affected them more than once, then they would. When the first attack occurs, then they take about 40%, then 90%. So you can tell that it is a success in that they do not take more than one dose of damage per wave. So violent. I love it. And now I'm just gonna one last test in order to see if things works by having 2 Incarnates to see if their effects are overlapping each other and preventing them from killing them if I've done things right. Give me a moment. Yeah, looks like it's working. It's a little bit difficult to tell, but let's try to select one. Yes. Good. And I'm happy with this result. I hope this has been productive for you, or at very least you had fun watching new spells be made. If you have any suggestion about something you want to see, then feel free to say so in the comment section and I'll try to make it in the future. Stay intact and have a nice day.